Hi, everyone. It's Mindrolling, and I'm Raghu, and I'm back with a wonderful new friend. We've met literally 2 minutes ago, and his name is Dzigar Kongtrul Rinpoche, and a wonderful person who has Are you living here, Rinpoche? Welcome to the show. Let's start there.
Thank you so much, Raghu.
Are you?
Honored to be here.
Yeah, I'm more honored to have you here. Are you living mostly in the U.S. now?
Yes, I live, mostly. Just a few weeks here and there, go out, but otherwise I'm here.
Uh-huh. Wow. Rinpoche lives in southern Colorado, and we'll talk about that. We'll actually get in our show notes, you'll be able to see and link up and see what they do at his place in southern Colorado. Rinpoche wrote a wonderful book called Diligence, the Joyful Endeavor of the Buddhist Path. And so, of course, he knows he's talking to a bhakti person, I think. Do you? The tradition,
Wonderful.
our tradition
Yes.
is from
Yes.
Ninkaroli Baba. I don't know if you know who that is.
Yes, I know Nikoli Baba quite
Right.
yeah.
But that tradition actually is very unusual for a supposed Hindu guru. He was not that, or is. We all got grounded in Buddhist meditation while we were with him in India in the early 70s.
Oh, really? I didn't realize.
Vipassana. Yeah, Vipassana.
Oh.
Yeah, Ram Dass sort of led the charge there. And then many of us have taken teachings from wonderful Rinpoches from the early days where we used to go see Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche when he was in Vermont at that time. And so it's very much a part of our tradition is the heart and the wisdom. And that has taken primarily from Buddhist teaching. So yeah.
I remember when I was young, people coming from Nainital to Bir, where I was growing up, having gone to see Nikuli Baba. And he was very famous, but I didn't know so much about it because I was too young to know. But then later, when I came to America, I met Ram Dass in Naropa, and then Krishna Das. So I heard a lot about him then. But now recently, Nikuli Baba has become more over the time famous because of the Steve Jobs and also
all that Zuckerberg, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of strange, but yeah, that's true. Can you talk a little bit about, you just mentioned growing up in India. Can you just talk about, how it all came to be for you related
I
to?
actually was born in Manali, as maybe you know where that is.
Oh, beautiful place. My God.
Yes. My parents left Tibet 1959 during the takeover. And then my father was a Tibetan Lama. So they were traveling back and forth with a lot of people following him. Winter time they go down to the plain, and in the summer then they will go come up to mountain regions, and mostly in Manali. And so I was born in Manali, and then right after I was born, around the same time, my father was also looking for a land to settle all the people who were following him. So then he found the land, so-called Bir, in Himachal, and then he established a big Tibetan settlement there. And then I grew up there, and my father passed away in 75, I think.
Oh, a long time back.
And then I was recognized around the same time as the Tuku, and then I was trained in my father's monastery. And my root teacher is Jebji Tengku Khyentse Rinpoche. And so then I studied with him. And then around my 20s, I fell in love and got married, and then I had a son, and then moved here to America, and I was teaching in Naropa.
Right, that's the big connection. Yeah.
Yes, for 5 years in the Buddhist studies, and then students came together and we purchased this land, or we were given this land, and then since then I've been here. I've been doing some retreats mostly, and then traveled a little bit here and there, but mostly a quiet life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's so wonderful and simple that you're sitting there, a young boy in Manali, and then,
Yeah.
you get recognized as a tulku, and
Yeah.
life follows a very simple progression from there. In
Yes.
our culture, we would have well, I actually know of lamas that were like, not, I wouldn't say fighting against it, being taken to the monastic tradition, but I even, Karmapa 17th actually talked about that a little bit, about the pomp and circumstance, that happens with, leading an order in his case, and how, it wasn't all fun and games,
Yeah.
but
Well,
you
in
took
my
to
case,
it.
I definitely took to it, and I was really reflecting recently back how wonderful it was to grow up in a Tibetan camp. Though, of course, the Tibetan community then was very, poor, and we had very little facilities, such as bathrooms and toilets and things like that, running waters and things like that. But there was a lot of a sense of a joy and a lot of sense of play, and there was a lot of sense of hope and a lot of community spirit and reviving of the culture and the reviving of the tradition, and especially the Dharma was just, there were lots of great masters. Then they had such a great vision to revive the Dharma. So there was a lot of sense of kind of magical things happening with the great masters, like a 16th Karmapa and so many others.
Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche comes to mind.
Yeah, Tengu Khyentse Rinpoche, he came to be a couple of times to consecrate
Oh, yeah.
certain temples and also give some teachings. And so, I think things have changed now. Of course, people live in a much more better conditions. But not so many people have much of a time as once they did. And when I was growing up, my father, the land that he bought, and they established the Tibetan settlement there, came with a huge tea plantation. And then he was the first, I guess, the Tibetan Lama or the leader who sort of ran the business, and also sold the Tibetan sold the tea in the market, and all of this is because of the people need ways to make a living. So that was how people made living with a little wedges. So you could imagine the whole, hundreds and hundreds of acres of tea plantation,
really?
with the
Wow.
peach trees in all over, and the blooms, and it was very magical in that way.
Kind of like here, actually, Ojai. It's all these orchards and not so much peaches, although we have some, oranges and
Yes,
the blossoms. When that happens, it's very magical. It's amazing. So
yeah.
you grew up in this atmosphere, and in India till you were how old?
I left India and Nepal and Bhutan. I was traveling around with my root teacher. I came to America in 87, the first time.
Wow,
And
long
then I
time.
moved here 89. And then since then I've been here.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, more than over of my life.
Yeah, the bigger part of your life, huh? Yeah, that's amazing. Oh boy. Well, as I was saying to you before about our particular tradition, we have spent real time with so many in the Tibetan tradition. There's one person who's had been with us when we first met, named Karoli Baba, who became a Lama, Tibetan Lama, named Lama Surya Das.
Oh yes, I know.
You know him?
Yes, very well.
So he emblemizes really these two sides. Now, of course, in Tibetan Buddhism, there is a real purview around devotion,
Yes.
which is different from other forms of Buddhism.
What do you mean by purviews?
Outlook, perspective.
Outlook.
Yeah, perspective.
Yeah.
So it really, again, including the heart and the wisdom part. And
Well, I mean, in a way that is true, but in a way, even in the sutra, Buddha said, Sharipu, the absolute truth is only going to be realized through the faith and devotion. So, there is that. Especially, I think, as you study more and as you get closer and closer to the truth, at some point you need to be able to trust yourself and also trust the experience and the lineage, so that then there's no this vicious circle of self-doubting, and then sort of leave things inconclusive. Because for science, maybe perhaps that works, but for someone on the spiritual path, that can be a very kind of unnerving and it can be a very treacherous experience.
Yeah. I always actually use when we talk about the blending of the heart tradition that we come from, Bhakti Yoga, and Buddhists, particularly Tibetan Buddhists. But I always say with discriminating wisdom.
Yes.
Right? That word lends itself to wise in internal interrogation and not fooling ourselves. I thought so. Yeah. So we are so appreciative. I mean, when you go back and you say, well, your parents came over, in 59 and when all of that took place in Tibet and of course all the people and the lamas and so on, masters that settled in India and then started going out from there around the world. I mean, that's a gigantic blessing, right? I mean, for us in the West.
Yeah, some people, I think, say that, and I think we are very appreciative of people who think that. And I think from the perspective of Dharma spreading over the time all around the world, particularly in the Western world, I think it was great that Tibetan Lamas, prior to Chinese invasion, they were all in Tibet and isolated. And then after that, they were all over and doing their work. And I think it has sort of, in that way, Buddhism in general, and particularly Tibetan Vajrayana lineage, has sort of really come much in the world stage and appreciated.
Yeah. Of course, His Holiness, Dalai Lama, has an enormous amount to do with that. We were so fortunate because he is... No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, he is like the sun,
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Absolutely. I mean, and we are so fortunate here. He used to come here a lot. Now he's older and can't travel the way he used to. But for a while, every year, we would go and take teachings with him wherever. Yeah, that was... he's so special. Okay, now we want to talk about Rinpoche, the book. It's called Diligence. Okay, and I'm sure you know this, right? But as soon as us Western, I'm trying to speak for a broad swath of who we are, like the people who are listening, who will be listening or listening now to this podcast, are not particularly Buddhists or not particularly Hindus, but some of them are and some of them are not, and all sorts of ways. What's the common denominator? How do we create this is what Mindrolling is all about. Of course, Mindrolling. It's where I found that, and then Mindrolling, that sounds great. And then people ask me, where'd you get that? But the reality is, it's about the practical ways in which we can have a balanced life, and the ways in which we can do self-inquiry, the ways we can, how mindfulness fits into this in terms of, and you say it so many times in this book, how important it is to be able to, Ram Dass used to call it witness, witness from a non-judgmental, in the end, all he did, Rinpoche, was he talked about loving awareness. He said, you move out of this place of the I, the self, that we operate from. And he says, take some breaths and go into the center of your being, center of your chest, and breathe into, I am loving awareness, just loving awareness. From that perspective, then you can really see clearly through mindfulness what your motivations and so on and so forth were. So you talk about that. Now, as I said, I'm sure some Westerners have said to you, Rinpoche, diligence, it immediately sends a shockwave through the center of my being. And Pema Chodron wrote the introduction. Everybody, if you don't know who Pema Chodron is, you absolutely should look her up. She has really very helpful books that she's written over her lifetime. But she said the word diligence might sound stern or make us feel uneasy. And I say, that's a wild understatement. Okay? It is. And then she said, until we get curious and start to explore its essential meaning as the fourth paramita. So I think, can you address that? The immediate shock of diligence, and then what are we really talking about? And it's not translating, diligence in Tibetan. I don't think it's because I see what you said. I mean, it's just like, okay, it's not really translating quite that way. But go ahead, give us an interpretation.
Well, this book came about with me giving teachings on the Bodhisattva Avatar, the Bodhisattva's way of life. It has 10 chapters, and one of the chapters is
Shantideva.
Shantideva's religion. And I totally agree with you how people have a resistance or sometimes maybe more than resistance, action with diligence.
Yeah.
But yet at the same time, I think we are all engaged in whatever field we are engaged, and we need to succeed in our field to be able to meet intention with action to have concrete outcomes. And whether that is in the spiritual path, or whether that is in the sports, or whether that is in business, or whether that is in sort of creating a more, any kind of balanced life with, let's say, health and well-being for oneself and for one's family. So in all of this, the effort is essential, and effort in a way that is not how do you say, sporadic. Yeah, sporadic, but consistent effort.
Right.
And I think everyone has this kind of an innate call to do something, and they have a lot of in many ways intention to be in a different place in their life, and in what they are doing, and a better outcome than where they are currently residing. But that intention sometimes gets, squandered by one's own laziness, and there's three kinds of laziness that in the Shantideva's Bodhisattva in the Bodhisattva's Way of Life speaks about. And one of those first kind of laziness is, procrastinating in what you want to do, not getting to it,
Yeah. Yes.
And then the second kind is, getting a little bit of a sort of pressure from outside, and then lots of pressure from one's own self. And then you bounce against your pressure, and then you sort of not, end up doing what you need to do to kind of meet the intention with action and get the outcome.
Yeah. But you do doom scrolling to replace, right? That's what you even said here.
Yeah, that's and then you reach out for something kind of mundane and something sort of what you feel at ease doing, and then it's up all the time by sort of spending your time in there. It's a kind of a way of ignoring or putting off the pressure, getting off the pressure from yourself. And then the last one is, having this kind of habitual, perpetual, the low self-esteem that comes up.
Yeah.
And people suffer a lot with that, thinking that they're not good enough, or others can do, but they can't do.
And particularly around meditation. How many people have said to you, you're first trying meditation. I tried it, but I can't do that. The thoughts just keep coming. I can't do it. Maybe I try something else, right? Yeah. Everybody has that silly notion.
Also, if one can remedy those three forms of laziness with a certain kind of a effort that is consistent and that is not waning and waxing too much, you will see the result. And you will be able to kind of feel more sense of healthy self and pride, as well as also a sense of good confidence within oneself. And then also the results shows, on its own. So I thought maybe, this might, of course, for the Buddhists, this will be related with the practice of the Dharma and on the question what they do, how they can be consistent. But then also taking the same principle in other fields of life, I think it can be helpful. But with this, then I, asked Jennifer if she wouldn't mind to edit, and then she did a wonderful job.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great. Wonderful.
And then Shambhala was gracious enough to want to publish this.
Yeah.
So this is my intention to sort of like be in a help to others if they're inclined to be open.
You've been here a long time, so you must have a good grasp of how crazy Western mind is.
Well, I think mine is mind, I think,
No. What about that? I heard a story. His Holiness was told about how they said, I'm not sure you've encountered this, Your Holiness, but Westerners do carry this thing around, which is, self-hate of some sort. And he was like, he was shocked. I can't remember exactly what that self-reflection was that prevented people from being open in the moment. But he actually was like, really? He couldn't believe it.
Well, it's ego has the two forms, right? Two extremes, I feel. And you find this in every culture, There's a one extreme, which is, I'm the best, and I'm great, and I'm, able to do anything I set my mind on.
Invincible is how we would say it. Invincible.
And they're self-affirming, which in a way I think is not, if it's authentic, I think it's okay. But if it is sort of trying to cover one's own insecurities and just pumping up unauthentically and trying to sort of project something out, what you don't feel quite true within yourself, it's one form of the ego manifesting. And then that's also a habit, and culture and surrounding and maybe environment and friends and families sort of have contributed to support that habit to be formed. And then the other side is, again, with the culture and family and the surroundings and friends, maybe have also contributed to support another form of habit, which is, feeling like you're lacking and you're not good and you're, worth less and all of those. So I think the right balance is to find oneself in the middle. And then there also, with a kind of critical intelligence to see what, how you see yourself and how you can actually be in the center and not sort of like fluctuate in both of those two ways.
Yeah.
So I think in the Tibetan culture, maybe perhaps, it's a little more that sort of like a self-affirming and self kind of like a, confidence and thinking that, you ought to sort of like rise, from a very child whole time, parents and the environment and the friends sort of like push you in that direction. So there's not so much this other habit.
Yeah.
But if you look deep in, most probably, I'm sure there's going to be feelings of both in culture.
Yeah. I think, though, that the way in which our natural goodness has been disregarded in our upbringing with here in the West with parents and social network and culture and so on is very pronounced. Whereas coming up in your tradition, it's pronounced, that we are essentially good and altruistic and so on, which you talk a lot about in this book. But when I talked about, when you were just going through the three kinds of laziness, and of course when I did read through that, I said, how crazy Western mind is. They actually react to just reading that. Lazy, and they may not even read the three different definitions. Just that fact, our defense mechanisms are so strong on anything that comes at us. Lazy? I'm not lazy. And then, of course, you read through, okay, yeah, no, I'm certainly struggling with that, and oh my God, yeah, scrolling. I'm doom scrolling every day. My God. And then, and yeah, no, I don't always feel myself. In other words, identifying with these aspects that Shantideva outlined in his treatise is exactly how many people identified, in sometimes more, a couple in each moment, not even separate. You're going through it.
I think the social media has really become a big part of our life. And before, you live in the world. If you isolate, you can isolate, but it's not that you could isolate like you do now, or you could do now. Just thinking that you are connected with everything by just scrolling and just being in the social media, but in reality, you're just with your TV or you're with your smartphone. So I think that makes a lot of unhealthy outcomes for people to suffer more psychologically and emotionally and physically. Also, sort of like have a more deterioration of connectedness or being in community.
Yeah, no, that's extremely important. And we talked about mindfulness. You say when we aim to accomplish something, it's helpful to understand the impediments we are bound to face. How we respond to challenges greatly determines their outcome. Being aware of our response, which so important for all of us, reacting the way that we do to all phenomena, takes mindfulness, meaning we need to pay attention to the state of our mind. Mindfulness is a great friend that helps us stay on track. We don't have some level of mindfulness. Even neutral actions can tend towards the negative, as our thoughts can easily slip into judgment or a subtle level of disdain towards others, even those whom we do not personally know, or regarding situations that we only hear about through the news or other third-party sources, which you were just addressing. But yeah, talk about the vast importance of mindfulness and the trap of supposedly your thinking mind is addressing mindfulness. And to me, without meditative practice, that can happen a lot easier.
Yes.
Yeah. But please speak to us about that.
I think there's in culture now, more and more people are talking about how important it is to have a positive thinking, and positive thinking meaning, to have a positive outlook of the world and positive outlook of others who comes up in your mind, even though you have some disagreement, but still from their point of view, seeing and what they're doing, and have a sort of like some understanding, and therefore some concession on your judgments, and not defining them, and right away rejecting from your mind as sort of these are not good people, or these are stupid, or these are crazy, or whatever labels that comes into one's mind, and then stick with it. I think this movement is a very, very positive, but yet at the same time, I think it has to be translated into real life.
You mean the mindfulness movement?
No, the positive thinking.
Oh, positive thinking. Right.
Positive thinking. Positive thinking has to be the goal to achieve in one's mind and life, and for one's own mental health, as well as a balance of one's mind and heart in a good way. And then that has also effects on your health, as well as relation to others, especially the close ones, because you have to deal with it anyway, and to have a positive thinking helps one's relation with one's close ones around. Not that you agree everything with what they say and what they do and who they are, but trying to look at from their side what they're doing, how they're doing, or if there's some flaws and there's some problems that you perceive how they are behaving, how they act out, kind of coming more from understanding and compassion rather than sort of a judgments and rejection. Really is a very key to have a good relation with your close ones, especially those who, you have no choice, but, you have to keep a relation with them. And then you wish very much in deep in your heart, you have a better relation with them. But the better relation has to start from you, in this way. You cannot demand them to change.
Yeah.
So for all of this, I think the mindfulness of mind is very, very important. First you have to kind of see yourself, how you're being, how you're reacting, even on the spot if you cannot, but later sort of like create a little time and make a little time to kind of review the interactions and your state of mind and how you kind of like fell short. And then having some sort of a strategy for the next time, how you could be different, with a more sort of openness, or more sort of non-judgmental, reactive, difference, reactive, just sort of, being present, not agreeing with everything, but being present to let others express themselves, and then sort of have a good, mind to mind, heart to heart, a person to a person, respectable, warm relation, So I think, I hope that, this kind of mindfulness practice can really promote that. And that's my sort of really hope. And the spiritual path for now, in this day and age, for people to spend a lot of time on the cushion is going to be very difficult, because we don't have that kind of span of attention. But in this sort of like a small ways. I hope that, spiritual teachers as well as the, person like yourself who has this kind of, very influence on the wide audience can sort of be help the audience and sort of shape the, the mindset of the world.
Yeah. I mean, to me, one of the biggest benefits of mindfulness, as long as you can stay out of your me, I, self, which is going to judge absolutely everything, which it does all day long when you're not being able to center that apparatus, let's say, is to see the motivations, to see your motivations of self-interest on so much. It's extraordinary, right? When you really start to watch it. I think that is just a spectacular outcome of the use of mindfulness, because then you get really honest. Would you not say, with yourself?
I think that's very true. That's very, very true. But yet at the same time, when you are just being aware of your thoughts and your habits, sometimes that habit can intensify, if you don't have another alternative. And if you don't have another way to shift your mind. So therefore, I think when one sees that one has this kind of a habit, as you are speaking, me, and I, and always everything having to be around you, I think it is really a great beginning to do some studies of benefit of altruism, benefit of thinking of others, benefit of shifting your care towards, from a singular self to the universal self.
Right.
And when you have that alternative, and then you have the motivation, and then you see the gain, and you see the benefits, then I think, habits are formed by supposedly four reasons, one by the kind of doing something continuously so, and then another, doing something in a sort of like a very intensive way, and then another, they call it in the sutra availability of the field, which means like whatever the cause and conditions that forms the habit, if those cause and conditions are there, the habit is going to be formed because the cause and conditions are there. Like for addict, someone who smokes, if the packet of smoke is lying in front of you, it's going to be easy to pick up and smoke. Or someone who has a habit of drinking, if there's alcohol nearby, and that kind of triggers. And then
what's that called, Rinpoche?
Field of availability of the field.
Availability of the field. Huh? Wow. Okay.
And then the last one is having no counter-agent.
Meaning?
Meaning like the habit is formed, habit is causing you pain and suffering, and you are aware of that, but you have no plan how you could topple that habit.
Transform.
Or you have no effort, you have no any kind of intention of doing anything other than just kind of going along with your habit and suffer the consequence. So the Dharma is sort of, Dharma remedies all of them, but first and foremost, I think it offers you the choice to, have a counter-agent to your negative habits.
Yes. Yes, indeed. And now, we haven't said one thing, though, about the author that you based this book on, Shantideva. Just a little bit about who he was, etc., because it's a great figure in Tibetan Buddhism.
Shantideva, I think, is in the 8th century Indian prince. And he was to be enthroned, but the day before he was to be enthroned as the king, he renounced his kingdom and he ran away. And then he became a monk, and then he was a monk.
Same as Buddha.
Same as Buddha. And he lived in Nalanda University.
Yeah.
And then studied there. And then he became a great scholar and great yogin. And so he wrote this text, so-called the Bodhisattva Avatara in Sanskrit. And in translation, I think it's Tibetan Chunjuk. And then in English, they translate as a Bodhisattva's way of life. Since then, outside of the Buddha's teachings, I think this very text has become, I heard even in India, there were about 100 commentaries. And then with the Tibetan masters, there's more than 100 commentaries.
Wow.
And so since then, this text has become the main text to kind of base mind training, So this is what we are talking about.
Wow. A great being. So before we have to leave, we do have to, because we've been talking about what diligence is and how it relates and what are the impediments and laziness and so on, which reflect directly on that word. But then you say, as the verses unfold, we will continually discover the notion of joy being emphasized as an indispensable aspect of diligence, the joy of holding the greater perspective of what we are doing. And it is the joy of knowing how each step of the path fits into this larger picture of awakening. Talk about that.
Now, this is in relation to the spiritual path, but in general, we spoke about the 3 kinds of the impediments, which is understood as a laziness here. Not in the usual way, but in a sort of what prevents you or what doesn't allow you to accomplish your intention.
Yeah.
So then, as for the remedy of that, then there's a 4 allies, and then 2 strengths. So the 4 allies, the first ally is, motivation, And the motivation is involved with sort of understanding what you want to do, why you want to do, what's the gain, what's the loss, and how this serves you. Thoroughly kind of studying that and, being clear about that in your mind is the first ally. In Tibetan, it's called mupa. If you are inspired to do something, not just don't go with excitement, but try to understand, how this serves you. And the second is the tempa, which is, basically, when any of those 3 laziness comes, particularly with the last one, the low self-esteem, to counter that, to have a self-confidence, can-do mentality. With the small bites, you will be able to sort of chew the whole, steak down, kind of in a mentality in yourself. And then that also in the beginning, if it doesn't feel quite completely authentic, try to, as there's a saying in the West, which is very good, which is actually also, we have a saying similar in the Dharma, fake it till you make it,
Yeah, that's it.
And then that self kind of respect and that self-confidence being very much kind of like conjured as in a practice, within you. And then the third is gava, which is like when you get despondent or when you don't have the sort of same kind of an enthusiasm or same kind of the vigor, or some other things come up in your life and you're distracted, or you feel, a little more sort of, stalled. Then, coming up with this sort of overall picture why what you've been doing for so long, or for how long ever it is, reminding yourself, the whole point of it again and again, and then kind of generate some furthermore delight and joy to re-engage, and then not give it up and move on to something else, because that can cause another habit that will be not very healthy one. So re-engage with the sort of re-motivation, re-inspiration, and focusing on the sort of goal and outcomes of the goal, and then trying to sort of like not let the present conditions, whatever the kind of challenges that comes, being not not susceptible to that. So that's the third. And then the fourth one is when you get fatigued, really fatigued, and sometimes, you overdo it sometimes, in excitement, in sort of like a non-disciplined manner. People who are disciplined, they're very consistent, they don't overdo. So sometimes when people overdo and you get fatigued, or condition-wise you get fatigued mentally or emotionally, then taking a break. But the break is to revitalize yourself and kind of like energize yourself to engage, like, like I think what in the I think in the Jewish community, the Sabbath, right, is to kind of take a break, so that you could get back. So those are the four allies. The allies means something that can help you to sort of see through your intention till the end, And then, so there's a two in that, two kind of stages. First stage is, you of course need more mindfulness and introspect vigilance. So that's the beginning, and sort of something you are adapting that is not you and that is not yourself completely familiar with it, and has become easy. And then so you sort of apply yourself, in a consistent way, in a sort of like a time frame that is workable, and that is not overdoing. Something like, for example, meditation. Half an hour to start, rather than sort of thinking that you're gonna, do hour or couple of hours as a beginning.
5 minutes even. Let's go. Let's start there.
5 minutes. That's right. Right. And then, like a driving, for example, this is something I think have written there. In the beginning, it's very difficult to comprehend everything you learn. You have to be mindful, and there's a lot that you have to learn to comprehend, and it takes time. And just being confident that if others have learned it, why cannot you? And you'll be soon learning it and being proficient in driving. And then you learn, and then, you drive without all that stress or all that kind of vigor, sort of an effort. You can drive very leisurely and very stress-free and at ease. So The first stage is called Lulamba, and then the second is called Wangduchawa. So when it becomes Wangduchawa, when it becomes a second nature to you, then it becomes a more joy. But up till that point, you have to kind of like use all of those aspects to meet your intention. And if you look at actually most of the people who are successful in every field, they have used without actually knowing, without having the kind of like the list of what are the four allies or what are the two strengths. They have done that. They have overcome their impediments. It's not like they are free of impediments. They have impediments, but they have overcome their impediments with the four allies and two strengths.
Yeah, that's so great. Wow. Yeah, there's so much in this book to absorb relative to being able to transform. Because all of this is about transforming habits and neurotic tendencies and understanding through mindfulness just more of reality rather than your projections and the stories that we tell ourselves and all of that. So that's why this is all extremely useful for anybody. And, don't have to be a Buddhist on the path or anything. This just gives away. That's why Buddhist psychology, which some, Shantideva is really espousing here, is so helpful.
It's very interesting that 8 centuries ago, people had the same mindset and same struggles as what we have now. It's maybe a different environment, but internally it's the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. So I want to read just a very short something from the book, because I think
that'd be great.
You talk about altruism. And to me, I did a friend of mine who's a podcaster and we did a book called The Movie of Me to the Movie of We. And we used ourselves as examples of all the habitual patterns and neurotic tendencies and growing up here in the West was like, and then how to address moving out of that, separate entity, or to get moving to no self, right? Moving out of this feeling that I am completely separate from everything in my world, which is how we are brought up. So we did this, it's an audio book. And so the last thing that we put in the book was actually part of a talk from Ram Dass. And it was all about compassion and generosity. It was exactly, and here, what we're speaking to here. It was all coming from that same place. Developing an altruistic intention sustains our mind in a condition of well-being and happiness, regardless of what happens on the outside. His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, often says that if we really want happiness, the best way to achieve it is genuinely to wish for others to be happy. Generosity, compassion, and these are, to me, the biggest antidotes to the way that we get really stuck into, that mind box that, that leaves no room for curiosity, leaves no room for the kind of spaciousness that one can develop through meditative practice. And this is one major way to get out of your way. A lot of what you're saying in this book, here's a way to get out of your way. Here's the way in which we are unfortunately caught. And here's a way to get out of your way.
Yes, one thing I wanted to kind of remind the audience is, this modern system of education and has a both sides and the structure of the family, and as well as the how we help the children grow up, has a both the positive and the negative. The negative is, as you were speaking of, saying, you have to focus on what you want, and you have to focus on what your goal is, or you have to focus on how you could achieve that. Nothing else matters, and nothing else sort of like is more important than just going for it and do whatever you need to do. That kind of an emphasis, But then, in the other hand, like in the schools, people compete in this way and try to get to the top, know. But at the same time, in the school, there is a sports, There's a sports. And in sports, most of the sports are team and sports. And as a team sport, you have to be team player, and you cannot be absolutely kind of focused on yourself. You have to, think how, the team can win, and how you can support each other. And so that habit has to kind of like grow or more into real one's own being, and take a deep joy in winning in that way. And when you get more sort of a satisfaction, and when you feel more inspired in that way to uplift others, there's a one story that I would like to share, if you don't mind.
No, go.
I don't know whether this is well known, but it's kind of an anecdote. Number 9 says, "I'm number 9, so I can do whatever I want to do with you," and then squashes number 8. And number 8 does the same to number 7, and number 7 does same to number 6, and then it goes down to the number 1. So then when it comes to the number 1, then the 0, the shunya, thinks, I'm going to be squashed. I'm nobody. So I better sort of like run away and stay in the corner, So it goes into the corner thinking that the number 1 is anytime going to come and kind of squash him, And then number 1 comes and says to the 0, "Don't be afraid. Don't be anxious. I'm not going to squash you. I'm just going to stand by you." So number 1 stands by the number 0, and it becomes number 10, right? And then, above all, right?
Right.
So this kind of a spirit is also there in the modern education. It just has to be kind of brought out, and people have to have that kind of an emphasis and joy to be that way, And that's really exactly what, Bodhisattva's way of life is,
Uplifting everyone.
Uplifting others, uplifting, not trying to squash up who you could, but rather uplifting all others.
Yeah. So happy to have met you today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for doing this. And my intention is to reach and be helped. And this kind of platform really offers that kind of possibility and outreach. So I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, absolutely. And this is Mindrolling on Be Here Now Network. Go to BeHereNowNetwork.com, and there's so many different wonderful people that teach and that are thought leaders and so on. So take advantage. And we will have ways, of course, links to get the book, as well as links to Rinpoche himself, and you'll be able to, I'm sure there are ways in which to join the teachings in southern Colorado, probably in the summer more, though.
Yes. Yeah, summer. It's a very cold year right now.
Yeah, I bet. Well, again, thank you so much, everybody. We'll
Thank
see
you.
you next week on Mindrolling. Namaste.
Yeah, Ravi. Namaste.